Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Forest Reserve session. Welcome to those newcomers who are attending this morning. This is how we usually set up, although usually I'm in a little bit better order when I come to the camera, but this is roughly what goes on each morning that we have this. So Forest Reserve is a raw black. The previous 7 weeks have all been green teas. And last week in particular, we did a green that was steamed instead of pan roasted in order to control oxidation. You tasted a distinct difference than as compared to those that had been oxidized using pan roasting methodology. What we learned last week is that the steaming methodology was the original methodology. And this wasn't invented in Japan. This was invented in China thousands of years ago. And the Japanese took it in 772 when monks who studied in Xi'an, or it was called Chang'an at that time, which was the capital of China during parts of the Tang Dynasty, they, at the invitation of the Chinese monks, took tea plants back to Japan, back to Kyoto, and that became the start of Japanese tea culture. And they really refined and they really fully developed what they'd already learned in China. China evolved in a different direction. And so that's what we covered during those previous 7 weeks. Why did we append this to raw blacks? Because we're going to do raw blacks for the next few weeks. And we did that because from a stylistic viewpoint, raw blacks, especially in the first few years 1 through 5, feel like kissing relatives to green tea. And there's a reason for that, because methodologically, they do have great similarity. And we'll talk about that similarity today. We're also going to do a little bit deeper delve geographically. And so for those of you who just rolled out of bed and thought, okay, I'm all ready to go, ready to get my Forest Reserve, all great, but you forgot to check your email, you won't have seen 2 maps that I sent. These 2 maps we're going to spend a little time talking about because they represent a key area related to tea history, possibly to the origin of tea, certainly within the scope of discussion of the origin of tea in terms of location. So we'll spend some time doing that, and by the end of today's session, you'll know the difference between green tea and raw black. You'll know why raw black is raw instead of cooked or finished. You'll have a clear understanding of some of the benefits of raw black. And you'll certainly know a lot more about Yunnan than you knew before you started this session. All right, let's jump on in. So I think where I want to start is, because we've just come off of this green series, let's talk about processing methodology. It's not complicated, and yet it's distinctly different than green once you get down to the details. So what do? No matter what, you got to pick tea. Okay. You pick tea with greens, especially the premium greens in here. It's all usually going to be a bud or a bud and a leaf or a bud and 2 leaves at most. All right. That's the green pick. For the raw black, typically, remembering that this from the raw black perspective, in some ways, is not only quality, it's volume. So what do I mean by this? You almost never, for a raw black, pick a bud and a leaf, or a bud and two leaves, or buds only. Perish the thought. Because when you pick a bud only, what is it as a farmer that you give up? You give up 4 additional leaves that'll bloom out of that bud. And I'm talking about a leaf bud. This is not a flower bloom. Leaf bud. Okay. So typically for the raw black, it's going to be, if there's a bud left, and there usually is, a bud and 3 or 4 leaves. And that gives, or that shapes the flavor range of what raw blacks can be, because you've got depth in there. Now, when you think about some of the greens, let's think about heirloom for a minute. Heirloom, bud only, tastes really good. It's got that bud quality to it. And yet, when you think of heirloom, or you think of dragon well, you think of these distinct flavors, but you don't necessarily think of, wow, there's a huge range. You think of more consistency of flavor than a range. With the raw blacks, so when I talk about range, let's be clear, because range here has 2 types of definitions. Range within your pick is one definition. Range within all the picks of all the different varietals of raw black is another definition. So I'm thinking about within a raw black varietal, if you only picked a bud and a leaf, your flavor would be limited to what the leaf is going to give you, the bud and leaf are going to give you. But when you have 3 or 4 leaves, now you have 3 or 4 leaves worth of range. Oh, and one other thing, now that you're thinking about it, there's some length on the leaf, the stem. And so that actually has flavor too. The farmers understand this. And so they know how to bring these flavors out. So that's so different. First off, size is different, because generally speaking, the raw black leaves are generally larger. Of course, there's always going to be exceptions. Somebody's going to all of a sudden think, oh, wait a minute, he said the greens are smaller than the raw blacks? Wait a minute, I have Wong's creation. I have proof that that's not true. And you're right, that's an exception. But typically, the greens, because they're from bushes rather than small to large trees, typically are going to be small. Remember, the small to large trees in Yunnan are classified by leaf size type. And so every varietal has usually a number assigned to it. And it's 1 to 10. And in Yunnan, most of the numbers are 7, 8, 9, or 10. That's larger. You get down to the 1, 2s, and 3s, you need a microscope. Well, it's not that bad. I need a microscope because I wear glasses. But for the rest of you who have normal vision, oh no, you can see those leaves. So that's a little different. So you have a bigger flavor possibility in many ways with a larger leaf. So that's one thing to think about. Among the range of all the different types of raw blacks, you have the following situation. You have location. Location implies terroir. Terroir implies different pHs. It implies different microclimes. Oh no. And in the terroir that we use in here, We talk about cultural terroir too. Ah, too many factors. I need AI to figure this out. Well, fortunately, you have me, and I'm less expensive than the AI. Actually, for the cultural part of that, really, you're looking when you think about Yunnan, you have 56 different cultures who inhabit Southwest China, Yunnan region. And many of them live in these regions where they do raw black, fully fermented, red teas, and they're doing them all in slightly different ways. And so that's a consideration when you think about, oh, I want a raw black from Munghai. Okay. Well, who lives in Munghai? Munghai. Well, you've got Daitsu. Okay. You have Hanitsu. Okay. You have Lahutsu. And that's the name of the ethnic group, and the Zu means the group. So you have all these groups. For some of them, these tea trees are totems. They leave their villages. They think of their origin as from these tea trees. For others, for example, on the Jingmai Mountains, in the Jingmai Mountains, it's about 30 miles north of the Burmese border. You have the Bulangzu, along with 2 or 3 other minority or indigenous peoples who live in the area. And they don't say that the tea tree is a totem for them, but they say that it's like the compass. It tells me where life is going. So great respect and great honor for the tea tree. So each of these groups is going to have a slightly different methodology. As we go through this, we'll talk a little bit more in terms of what that might translate in terms of processing. And we're going to talk also about what's the countervailing pressure or force that more standardizes versus this very minority driven or indigenous peoples driven. Yeah.
Are you aware of the different indigenous groups talking to each other about tea methodology? Did that come up in your visits?
That's a great question. So the question is, even though they all speak different languages, do they have some sort of ability to talk to each other about, hey, in my village, here's how I'm doing. Oh, that's interesting. In my village, here's how I'm doing. So typically, there isn't that much crosstalk in neighboring villages. There's a lot of crosstalk when a village becomes famous and they start getting visitors from all over Yunnan. And the visitors come in, they introduce themselves. Oh yeah, I'm from this village in such a place. God, your tea is, I hear it's really good. What are you doing with your tea? Whether they get the full answer is questionable. And part of that is you have to be self-aware as a farmer what the real full answer is. Sometimes you're not self-aware. That sounds weird. That's like saying to a cook, okay, you made these brownies and you don't know what you did. Well, remember, grandma is real self-aware. And grandma always makes the best brownies. But when you visit grandma and ask for the recipe, she simplifies or she shortcuts. And yes, she gave you the recipe, but it's not the recipe because she has judgment. And the judgment is what isn't translated. That's really what I'm talking about here. So the farmers get some of that information, but the main force which tends to help farmers do closer to a standard. And I only mean closer. They don't have a standard, especially in Yunnan. Yunnan, and we'll talk about this as we get to the maps, hideously difficult to travel in. So, you don't just wake up and say, okay, I'm going to get on 880. I'm going to, take some vehicle and travel for 90 minutes and I'm going to be at my destination. Oh, you can say this in Yunnan. And it's just like when we took a group there in 2019. We started off in the morning and we said, yeah, we're going to take this road that we're going to take. And, I think it'll only take 12 hours or so. And I'd actually taken the route. So it wasn't, I think it's going to take 12 hours because I had bad information. In fact, when I took the route, it only took 9 hours. I already built in what I thought, well, we're going to have slow eaters, we're going to have lots of bathroom breaks. The whole thing that every good leader of a group starts to think about when you're thinking about group dynamics. Of course, 16 and a half hours later, there is no such thing as any explanation at all, which can easily explain away why that happened. Aside from the fact that the roads are treacherous and that the bathrooms are treacherous, turns out everything in Yunnan is very treacherous. I love the place though, and I'd take a group in a minute again. All right. So this countervailing pressure is the scientists who go to the villages, and typically they're invited, especially by producers. That is the farmers who are producing and sending tea out. They're in a competitive market. And in a competitive market, they like to be known as, hey, we're pretty good. Yeah, our stuff is pretty good. Doesn't mold after 3 months? Not usually, right? The not usually is not good enough. It must not mold after 3 months. Therefore, there are rules. You got to follow those rules. If you don't follow those rules, you'll fail. Well, you invite scientists come in. Hey, you're under roasting this thing. What do you mean I'm under roasting? This is the way I've done it for years. But the scientists have studied across all the areas, so they know what works very well and what doesn't work. They know by size of leaf what works and what doesn't work. And so there is this great reach now to try and improve farmers' lives. And it's driven by the scientists who are driven by the leaders, local leaders who invite them to come in. Please go to these farms, tell them, advise them that this is the best way to produce tea. We've been with some of these scientists before when they've been on these trips. Hilarious. Scientists will try and use their best manners and best way of communicating to the local people and saying, okay, when you fry this, you've got to fry a certain way. They'll demonstrate. They'll give local people a little chance to try. Oh, it might be better if you did this and that and the other. And then they walk away. Now, I didn't walk away because, I'm just learning all the time. And you see, sometimes it sticks and sometimes it does not. So it's really hard to change tradition. And that doesn't mean, though, thinking about Chinese culture, one important thing about Chinese culture is, or even indigenous cultures in Asia, is that length of time is different than your and my horizon. When we say, hey, this got changed, we're not talking over the next 1,000-year period. Tomorrow, I want to see a change. That's just not culturally how the Chinese or the indigenous peoples approach it. They think of it as, okay, well, we might not get this all taken care of this harvest. It might take us a few harvests to get this taken care of. We'll eventually get it taken care of. We have time. Okay. And actually, over time, you see the market forces, number one, start to push everybody. And number two, as the younger farmers become more educated, they go back and just like youths everywhere, hey, parents, this is not a good way to do things. Here's how you got to do things. Now, usually the youths don't realize there's some reasons that you've gotten to this spot. And so the so-called shortcuts, yeah, they'll work, but maybe some things will be left out. So there's always this give and take as you try and make changes. And it's really, really hard with somebody who's been doing something for 30 years, and all of a sudden you say, oh, this is not so good, do it another way. But again, market forces at the end of the day will help determine what happens, because if all of a sudden you can't sell your teeth, then it's change or die, in essence. It's just a slower process than it might be here, because the value and time of money is different here than the time of money in, say, China. So actually, I used one word wrong just a minute ago. I said the value in time. It's really just the time of money, not the value. The value is the value. And you can't really be talking about that. You can only talk about how long or how soon does money, from an investment standpoint, so planting, investing in the seeds, investing in the workers, how long does that turn into a larger and larger farm? That's the timer. All right. So, I've gotten through picking. God, that took me a long time to get through picking. Hope I can get through these other steps a little faster. Maybe I'll just leave some steps out, then it'll be much faster. After picking, with green tea, what do? You wither shortly. Shortly being no more than about 45 seconds. You're just trying to soften up, make leaves pliable. If with raw black, you do wither. It's usually a 3 to 4 day process, because you want that moisture to be even less than it is in green tea. And you sun wither, by the way, also. So this has an effect, because really, when you wither, you're making leaves pliable, but in addition, you're hoping that you're setting the preconditions for the microorganisms from the forest to start to go into homeostasis. You knew I was going to use that word because it's more than 8 letters. As soon as I get those words, I'm going to use them over and over again. So I'll probably say that 6 or 7 more times before we're finished. Homeostasis, what does that mean again? That means it comes into the organism. The microorganism isn't killed. It stops functioning in an active way. It kind of hibernates. It kind of goes to sleep. And that's what the objective is for raw black. You want the microorganisms, fungi, molds, bacteria. You want those from the forest that were picked along with the leaves. You couldn't see them, but they're there. You want them to hibernate. Okay, with green tea, point, you get it on, you pan fry it 99.9% of the time in China. In Japan, you steam it. Objective is the same. Denature the oxidative enzyme. Plain and simple. I don't love you anymore. I want the greenness. I don't want any ugly spots on my green tea. You're denatured. In other words, they kill the oxidative enzyme. You're not supposed to use the word kill. Use denatured. That sounds so much more ecological. What do they do with raw black? They use a lower temperature to fry. They use less time to fry. So they're still frying. That's interesting. It's a lower temperature. Okay. I'm not going to burn my hand this easily. That's good. Maybe this is preserved hand culture. No, it has nothing to do with that. Because remember, instead of trying to denature the oxidative enzyme, you're trying to force everything into that homeostasis. And that's it. Take it out, all done. All done with that step. With green tea, when you did that, you either shape the leaf when you were frying it at 300 to 400 degrees, using hand motions that didn't allow your hand to actually touch the pan unless you were a novice. It's one thing about being a novice. In the green tea field, we remain a novice for a very short time only. After you do that, if you didn't shape in the pan while you were frying, after finishing frying, you shape then. And the objective of shaping is an aesthetic and cultural objective. What do I mean a cultural objective? Some indigenous peoples just wake up, oh, this looks pretty to me. No, it's by lineage. And cultural lineage is fine. That this is over time what has been done. It's not done for a specific reason in the way that we might categorize from a Western point of view. Oh, this is so pretty, or it's in that really beautiful thing. No. That's culturally what was done over time. That seemed to produce the best flavor. Whatever ceremony was originally attached to that is probably not attached to it today. So you go through that, and then the last step. Now, some of you are going to point out to me, maybe you missed a few steps. I missed a few steps of refined processing in green tea. And not every green tea goes through these very refined sieving and sorting. And those aren't essential to this discussion. But I acknowledge that they're there for a few of the green teas. You go through and then you apply heat to get the moisture down to 3 to 5% so it doesn't mold. You sort, you package, you go to market. And you have a product where the oxidative enzyme is denatured. So its shelf life without oxidizing is a long shelf life. Its shelf life overall isn't necessarily long, but it won't oxidize. What about with the raw black? We got through frying at a lesser temperature. We do more shaping and rolling. How much more? Well, compared to green tea, so say dragon month. Everybody's heard of dragon month. You're shaping in the pan as you're doing it. So maybe that takes you 8 minutes. Maybe you're a slow shaper. maybe it takes you 12 minutes. But you're doing raw black. First off, it's not in the pan. It's in a cross-hatched bamboo flat, and you got to use the right hand motions. You know, you can't just say, "I like this sheet. This feels good." No. There's specific hand motions, and you do that for usually 60 to 90 minutes. I'll tell you, I was already tired by minute 17. That's a lot of hand motions. Of course, I didn't say anything though, because bad manners to be hand motioning, and I'm the only one who can't do it. No, that doesn't happen. So you hand motion this stuff, you shape it 60 to 90 minutes. At the conclusion of that, you then sun dry. Sun dry. Now, I didn't hear sun drying green tea. What I heard was you bake and you get it down to 3 to 5%. In raw black, you sun dry. Well, that sounds really, very modern, organic. It's been being done that way for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And the reason is that they understood that if you sun dried, you would wake up those microorganisms. And the farmers at this point come to a fork in the road. And the fork in the road is, okay, I'm all done with this, except I'm gonna cake it. Usually they'll cake it also, form a cake out of it. And that's what I normally call 70% tea. In China, they would call that Maocha, Maocha. And really, it has that sense of unfinished tea. Well, what is unfinished tea? You have raw black on the board. You're giving us unfinished tea. Well, unfinished really to indicate that raw black has a really interesting journey ahead of it. And its destination is way out there. It's 30 to 70 years out there. In order to become naturally fully fermented, it takes 30 to 70 years. That's a long journey. By human terms, that's a long journey. By geological terms, that's still baby, but and we're going to talk about that in a minute when I look at the map. Yes.
So fully fermented would mean that there are no active functioning organisms anymore.
Oh, this is a great question and assumption, and I like it. So the question is, once you say fully fermented, does that mean there's no more activity occurring with any of the organisms, either chemically or organically? And so if I said yes, for your purposes, it would be 90% true. Now, a scientist in China listening to me, oh no, he's wearing linen and he's about to tell a lie.
Wait a minute, that's not linen.
Oh, it's not linen. Well, it's even worse. Oh, I can say whatever I want today? Oh, okay. Well, then it's not a lie. It's the plain old truth. But a Chinese scientist would argue correctly, by the way, and say, okay, most all of the organic activity is all done. Might there be a hint of chemical activity still left? And insofar as you reduce things, it's like taking a number and dividing it by half. You do it 1,000,000 times, you still have a number. You do it a trillion times, you still have a number. The number is very small. It still exists. Yeah.
Cindy asks, is raw black typically sold in the retail market in China?
So Cindy's question is a great one. And her question is, when you look across all the markets, tea markets in China, would you be able to walk in and buy raw black versus, say, a fully fermented? And the answer is yes, you would. Not only would you be able to buy a raw black, the standards for buying would all be observed. So what do I mean by that? You'd know the year, you'd know the size of the leaf, you'd know where it was done, you would know when it was caked versus when it was picked. If that is one of the elements, you'd know all those things because the tea sellers would have all this information, and they should have all this information because those who are buying at those type of markets, and every city has one of these things. In fact, some cities have a few of them, and they're kind of a little bit equivalent to what we have here at tea shops. They have all that information because you make your decisions as a consumer based on that information. So yes, they would have that information. Okay. You're thirsty. I can feel it. And the investors who create commercials for this segment want me to have a commercial right now. So let's have a little commercial, and I'll see you in 10 seconds. Okay. It gives me great pleasure to bring forth the tea master, full of her inner cat and her outer cat.
Yes, I have it. Okay, thank
You have a lot of
I
cats,
have
yes.
a cat. It's the cat.
A new cat in the shop.
It's a cat.
And this is courtesy of Jim. This is a
Yes.
beautiful little baby
Painting,
that
incredible.
arrived yesterday.
Did you see my cat?
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Tim.
Thank you.
Lovely.
All right, so Bijou will take you through the brewing methodology for Forest Reserve. And once it starts brewing, then we'll refer to those maps because those maps are important to tell you a little bit more about Isla. But let's watch first how she sets this up. So she has 3 mugs. She has tea toy, a strainer, and a tea rock.
But your friend.
Yes.
Two friends. So.
Yes. And for the new friend who's on today, remember, we're not going to cover the cups. Everything for raw black is done uncovered. In fact, for most of the teas except the Oolong, uncovered is going to end up with the best flavor. So that's what you're seeing here. And out of all of these tools, the only 2 that you must have are 2 mugs and a strainer. Tea toys are nice. Tea rocks are nice. Tea trays are great, but they're not essential. The 2 mugs and the strainer are essential.
Cindy asks, any ideas, suggestion as to why I cannot see other people's comments today? I can only see mine. I suppose that's a question for me. And no, actually, I don't know the answer to that. The setup looks a little different on my end as well, but I'll see whether I can figure something out.
So I love it when companies upgrade and give you better performing software products. I'm sure they are better performing. The only problem is we're humans and they didn't upgrade us. What the software companies really need to do is first upgrade us and then upgrade the software. And that's probably what's happened. Tea Master is dissipating the steam, aerating the water, and particularly for the newcomer, pay attention to the rhythm, not in a hurry, pay attention to details, be very present. This is what this is all about, being very present. So the Tea Master is taken from bag number 2, called Forest Reserve, incorrectly labeled July 12th, should have been labeled July 19th,
Please remind us, what's the water temperature?
170. 是170还是170?
For me is 170, for them 175.
Yeah, the water temperature is 170, but if you go anywhere from 170 to 175, you notice the Tea Master poured on the sides of the cup, not directly on the leaves. This is a 3-minute steep. And she puts 175-degree water in the recipient cup as well. Get that heated. All right. So one of the things you notice right away is a lot of this sinks, but some of it stays at the top. You also notice in looking at these that there's this is almost slightly twiggy in the sense that there's real little branches in this, and these are from the tea tree itself. All right, so let's go to the map and let's look at those together, because I sent those to you this morning because I wanted to give you some reference. So let's look at this one first, and this will be easy because it's got the red dots in the middle. So one of them has red dots and one does not. So look at the red dot. And on the right side of the red dots, in Chinese, it says Ailao Mountains, Ailao Shan. On the left side, it says Wuliang Shan, which is Wuliang Mountains. In between is an enormous valley. So when you're traveling in this area of China, in the Ailao Mountains, you look 30 miles to the west, and there's this another enormous mountain range, which is even larger than the Ailao Mountains. Why haven't you heard that before? Because that place is even wilder in terms of less accessibility than the Ailao Mountains. Ailao Mountains, just again to give you a picture of them, contain about 15% of wild species, all the wild species in China, just this set of mountains alone. And just so that you're, aware, what sort of things, if you had unlimited ability, might you see there? Well, you might see green peacocks. You might see gray-eared monkeys. You might see black gibbons. You would certainly see large predators, cat predators. You might even see elephants. So there's and tons of different varieties of monkeys and snakes. Okay. Timer has gone off. Those tea masters not nervous. Just rhythmically getting the water, tea water separated from the tea leaves. Remembering that this will make lots of cups, 3 cups at a minimum per 6 grams. And oh, this has color. Wow. 对了，都差。Okay, so one of the reasons this has so much color, and Tea Master just pointed that out, is we actually got this tea pre-pandemic. And I want to say that this was probably picked in 2017 or 2018. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, most likely 2017 or 2018. So we're going to enter the quality arena. And for the new person, quality arena refers to establishing where the astringency is on your tongue, what the aftertaste is, and then what the energetics are. Now, you may be used to seeing this as something, what's the chachi or this thing or that thing. We don't do that here. We talk about it as energetics and what it is you can actually detect. That is what's really important. The second sip will focus on aroma and taste. Yes.
Kathy observes the warm, dry leaves have a sweet aroma, almost like a dark cherry.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. Warm, dry leaves have a sweet aroma, almost like dried cherry. I like that comment. Let me go ahead and enter the quality arena. Every time I do this, and this is the wrong response. So for the new person who's watching this, I'm not supposed to say what I'm about to say, but everybody else on the broadcast understands that as an understudy, I lose self-control. So I'm not supposed to say this is going to be a great surprise for you. There it is. I said it. I'm supposed to really focus on where the stringency is. Stringency, I made a note. And again, newcomer, make sure you write your notes out because you'll find that comparing from week to week, this will help you remember. Second thing, yes, I've detected an aftertaste. I don't have energetics yet. I'm working on it. Energetics comes at different speeds. Where you have astringency on your tongue will be different because we're all genomically different. So don't worry if things are a little different, and don't be afraid. There's very few things to be afraid of. In fact, let me identify what the few things are, and then you can be totally unafraid because you're not going to use in any context the word garlic or cheese. So both of those are already in the forbidden phrase, taboo phrase area. So you're just not going to go there. Almost everything else is going to end up being fine because we perceive things differently. All right, I'm going to enter this again. And this time I'm going to reinforce what I just think I detected. And then I'm going to focus on aroma and taste. My goodness, there's another overwhelming quality to this. But you all are going to tell me it's your turn to brew. So the tea master will now brew with you. You'll get your water ready. You'll set your timer for 3 minutes. And as soon as we start brewing, we'll talk about the second method. But don't look at it yet. Just keep focused on what you're doing. Watching the tea master. Heating the cups. Making sure they're absolutely clean. You'll hear this over and over again from us because cleanliness, freedom from aromas that don't belong to the tea, just absolutely paramount to being present with tea. If you can achieve that in your own practice, you're going to have the most fun ever with this tea because these teas take you to places that no other teas you've had will take you to. It's just a different world. We are at the top of the tea food chain in China. We get the best of what there is. She's heated the cups, aerating the water. And you notice the tea master is just rhythmic. And it's just great because there's no sudden movements. There's no oops. Oh, I forgot that. There's none of that stuff. She's present. She focuses on details. Not in a hurry. And you'll all develop, and all of you have developed your own rhythm. That's a good thing. She puts the leaf in a heated cup. She shakes the leaves in order to distribute the heat. Pours on the side of the cup. And hits the time, 3 minutes.
Jonathan shares, I'm afraid of the LCS practitioners of the dark milk and sugar arts. So happy to have Sophie's.
I love that comment. Love that comment. Yep. This is yeah, we've accomplished a lot here. And it's with your help because spreading the word about how beautiful these teas are by themselves, on their own, and the surprises they bring week by week. It's just amazing. Yes.
What kinds of plants or trees grow in the area? Dylan Teresa asked, I imagine they influence the flavor, etc., even if ever so slightly.
Yeah, great question. Teresa and Dylan ask, is this strictly a tea tree forest without one other plant in it, or is it growing among a horde of other plants? And the answer would be the latter. It's growing among a horde of plants, including sour cherry trees, including all sorts of deciduous evergreen trees. We didn't detect in this forest any pine trees, but I'm sure throughout the Ilau Mountains there must be pine trees, though we didn't detect any in this area. The plants, there's tons of ferns, there's tons of medicinal plants. And by the way, in the pictures I sent, you saw things that must have made you wonder, God, did the understudies suddenly lose track that this is a tea class? He's sending me pictures of all these weird things in bins. All those weird plants in bins are medicinal plants from the local forest, including some that actually grow on tea trees. And so, yes, there are hundreds and hundreds of old style plants. It's an amazing environment, and there's a huge amount of water running through this forest. The soil it's brown soil. Underneath there's sandstone. There's a little bit of volcanic soil. Uh, this whole area was shaped over the last 100 million years. And it was part of as the end of the Jurassic period occurred, this area through a change in faults erupted, or was created, I should say. All right, timer has gone off.
Several of the participants had trouble opening the photos, just FYI. So maybe a resend. And Jennifer shares her photos showed up at the bottom of the email, though it looked like they were higher up. So it might be where you guys are clicking, but thanks for that, Jennifer. And maybe we'll resend the pictures later.
We can resend the pictures later. Most of the issues are on your end, though. I got messages from some of your servers, and it is because I sent so many photos, including a movie. I probably shouldn't have sent a movie, but you know what? Couldn't help myself. It showed this beautiful waterfall in the Wuyi Mountains. The water was running over the road. People couldn't pass by, and so we were stuck there. And that's also where I saw that shop, and we showed the herbals, the TCM medicines that were there. Yeah, happy to perhaps on an individual basis, if you'll send me a request, I'll go ahead and resend. Remembering though, I'm sending quite a bit of material. It's probably about, I want to say 60 megabytes. So it's not insubstantial. Yes.
Jennifer observes the warm, dry leaves reminded me of sweet seaweed.
Sweet what?
Seaweed.
Seaweed. Oh, okay. So Jennifer leads off. From the dry leaves, which had the hints of sweet dark cherry, we now go to the wet leaves, which have this hint of seaweed. So this is the beauty of being present and going through this like this, because we start to appreciate the range. Raw blacks are incredible. And as they age, they become more and more incredible. In the beginning, raw blacks are always blunt with you. They're very forward. Very rarely do they have the edges off of them. But by the time they get this age, they always have the edges off of them. And next week we'll talk about why, because there's science involved with all this too. Yes.
Rob says the tea water smells wet with elements of steamed lotus leaf and hints of cider.
God, Rob, I love this comment on about 10,000 levels. I'll tell you why, because somehow it's like you were sitting on my shoulder when I went through the quality arena, because you talked about how wet these leaves are or feel as you're drinking. You talk about almost a sense of juiciness is what I'm catching from your comment. That's precisely my immediate thought. And that was immediately why I said, oh, you're going to enjoy this, because it just is fun on the palate. Did I miss anything else from his?
I know that maybe the steamed lotus leaf and
That's right, steamed lotus leaves, that's right. And I like that part also because, you know, tea at this level is about a lot of different flavors. And it's not flavors we or get in tea bag tea ordinarily. Good catch. So while you're thinking, raw black in Yunnan is consumed as much, if not more, than the fully fermented teas. Typically, local people like raw black because they bring a wider range of flavors, typically, than most of the fully fermented. Most of the fully fermented have a relatively narrower range of flavors, whereas you'll find as you go through the raw blacks, there's this huge range of flavors, and part of that, there's real explanations to explain why. Yeah.
Jennifer says, I agree with the comment John made about the edges being off as it has now aged. I don't remember liking raw blacks in general, but I really like this tea. It's very mellow and grounding energetically.
This is really, thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate that. So she talks about the fact that normally, if somebody brings up raw black, I said, that's not my favorite. But she's detecting now that this seems so different than what she's tasted before. And so, of course, as it ages, two things are happening. The first is the microorganisms who were still homeostatic before they got out there and were sun ripened or opened again. They're working. They've been working all these years. And then there's another magic which comes in about year 6, and that is oxidation starts to occur. And so you have both of these things going on at the same time, and they cause the teas to clearly change flavor, clearly change mouthfeel. It's incredible. Yes.
Kay says, call me crazy, but early on I perceived a slight effervescence.
Oh, that's so interesting. So Kay perceived in the very beginning a slight effervescence. And the way I think that I agree with her, although I wouldn't have used effervescence, was again when I made the comment that you're going to enjoy this. It was again because it was cider-like, juicy, and if effervescence is part of that, then yeah, I absolutely get that because this is so unexpectedly attractive and easy to drink.
Rob shares that Sue says it tastes like walnuts and mushrooms.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. So thank you, Sue. Sue has tasted this and she detects walnuts. And I really strongly get the walnut flavor in there. That's so interesting. Nobody has said that before, but I get where that comes from. And she also detects kind of a mushroominess in this. Thank you.
Jen observes the scent of wet leaves and the forest floor. This is what I'm just going to read it as written. Scent
Okay.
of wet leaves and the forest floor and the smallest hint of pear deep down. While the tea water is smooth and low astringency, the taste to me is mossy with lots of underlying dark greens, but less pronounced than the scent would imply. Very drinkable, energetic, slow to emerge, seem lower than the other raw blacks I've had.
Love this comment. It's jam-packed with all sorts of things. So we have forest floor, we have wet leaves, we have easy to drink,
Pear.
low astringency, a hint of pear. I love that catch because for me, there's definitely a hint of fruit in this, and I catch the pear for the semi-sweetness or the light sweetness. I catch the cherry for the depth of what fruit is in, or hint of fruit is in this. And at the end, there was
The energetics are slow to emerge, seem
Yes.
lower down than the other raw blacks that I've hatched.
that part of
And
the
she asked,
comment.
is that the age? Is that related to age of the?
It is, and great question. Energetics are not as forward, and part of this is they've aged. And so the whole sense of this, again, year one, the energetics of this would have been much more pronounced. And as you go through a raw black and it matures and ages, and you get all this mix of flavor, and all of a sudden it's not about the energetics, it's about all the flavor and drinkability, the mellowness of this, the juiciness of this, effervescence, cider-like. Oh yeah, yeah.
Jeannie mentioned specifically this tea feels juicy to me with astringency growing to be more on the roof of my mouth than on my tongue. While Kathy says this tastes different than any raw black I've tasted, complex with multiple flavors and a soft astringency.
So love both of those comments. Jeannie talks about juiciness and a buildup of astringency. And by the way, finally, I'm getting that buildup of astringency, although in a different place. Mine isn't on the roof of the mouth, mine's on my tongue, but neither is right nor wrong. They're both right. And that was followed by Kathy's, what did she say?
By Kathy's comment about how different,
Yes.
how complex with multiple flavors this is with a soft astringency.
Soft astringency and how very complex the flavors are. And it's not like any other raw black she's had. You know why? Because first off, it's really good source material. B, it's here at Sophie's, which means we know how to store it. It's loose leaf, so it's aging faster than it would as a cake. All these things are leading to this complexity, this juiciness, and this difference in flavor, which is just fabulous. And now I encourage all of you, and you'll see this as we go through the raw blacks over these next few weeks. When you come in and you're in a raw black mood, just start to pick off the board, because many of our raw blacks have aged significantly, and the flavor profile is significantly different than you may have remembered from before. Yes.
Jeannie finds the energetics are heart calming for her. And Jen on energetics says, okay, does this mean at a point you need to rename it intensity?
So both
Rename intensity, since we already have
Re-
intensity.
both of these are great points. So Jeannie starts off with she talks about
Heart calming.
Heart calming. Yes, heart calming. I like that. And that kind of goes on along with the juiciness, along with Jen's comment before about the interjects not being forward in the beginning. They're harder to detect, and heartwarming comes right back to that point, because it isn't immediately that you get that. You suddenly realize, oh, this is heartwarming. And then the funny comment about, well, in essence, the comment is, as these age change, as these teas change, perhaps you should be changing the names.
As we wrap, Kathy shares, the energetics remind me of the grounding clarity I get with flip teas.
Oh, how interesting. Okay, so Kathy wraps it up here by talking about a comparison with the groundingness that she gets from this with cliff teas. There's for her a reminiscence. And I really think what she's referring to in that reminiscence is the depth of the grounding that you can get from both styles of tea. And truly, when we're in Yunnan and we're drinking some of these incredible aged black, particularly the ones that they've aged at the farms, uh, totally relaxing. And it just totally allows you to kind of let go and integrate with what's going on around you. Great catch. All right. Wow. I am so happy to have started this series off with you. And I'm really loving the rhythm of this again because you had the 7 weeks of green teas. You really know lots of things about green teas. And now you get this relative and you can see the crossover, but you can obviously see the differences and how easy, by the way, this is to drink. When this is this age, do you have to have anything in your stomach to drink this? You really don't. It always helps to have a little something. With green tea, you usually absolutely should have a little something. This, though, it's really easy. All right. We finished up Forest Reserve today. I wonder where I should take refuge next week. Oh, I didn't realize. Next week, we are doing refuge. We're seeking refuge next week. This should be lots of fun. Your responsibilities this week. Stay healthy. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.